So much, Michael. Thank you. So I am not that great with technology, so my assistant is on with me and she will share her screen. And while she does that, I want to thank the Cornwall Center for these opportunities. Dr. Payne, Mr. Simmons, and everyone on your team, thank you so much for allowing us in the school district to be a part of this. I know your theme is accelerating change in Newark, and so we're really excited just to share some of the work that we're doing across the district with our teachers, our leaders, all of that work. And thank you for those of you that are taking the time today to join on this snowy day, taking time out of your day to join. I appreciate that. So Michael started with giving you a little bit about my background, and so I appreciate that. This is my second year as deputy superintendent, loving the role so far. I started out as a teacher of the deaf, so I know how to sign. I taught at the Bruce Street School for the Deaf, which is located inside of George Washington Carver School. And by far to date, that has been, I would say, the most rewarding position I've had thus far. So today we're going to talk about how we are leading our leaders to accelerate our progress in Newark. Next. So if you attended a couple of weeks ago, our superintendent presented. If you've attended any of our board meetings or business meetings, even if you've had a chance to look at our strategic plan, on page 23, he says, the principal is the lever. He says this all the time. And the reason is simple, right? Because leadership has an important impact on what happens in the classroom. And effective principals, we know, are really essential to student success. And so you will hear the superintendent say this many times. We often also use the term because we know that in order to do this work, we need our principals and we need effective principals. Next. This year, as Michael mentioned, began the rollout of our 10-year strategic plan, The Next Decade. And in that plan, there are 6 priorities, 35 strategies, and priority 4 speaks directly to professional learning, continuous learning for all. And strategy 4.3 reads, implement a district-wide leadership pipeline to guide the identification, preparation, selection, placement, and retention of school leaders for the Newark Public Schools. So it speaks directly to what we're doing to develop our leaders, and whether they are new leaders or leaders that have been with us or leaders that we are training or teachers that we are training to become leaders. Today, though, we're going to focus on our newest school leaders, which we call our non-tenured principals, and the work that we're doing to develop them as well as retain them. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the work that we're doing with our assistant superintendents. The Wallace Foundation refers to that group as principal supervisors. So we'll talk about our non-tenured principals and our assistant superintendents and the work that we're doing to support them. Next. So a research study done by RAND says that there's a strong link between teachers and effective principals. Teacher turnover is lower in schools led by high quality principals. Research further indicates that principal turnover leads to lower teacher retention and lower gains for students. So simply stated, good teachers deserve good principals. We know that. And in fact, the number one factor determining whether or not teachers stay in a school, whether it be a underperforming school or a high performing school, the quality of the principal we know is important. Next. Principals are critical to improving struggling schools, and they say that there are virtually no documented instances of troubled schools being turned around without intervention by a powerful leader. Many other factors may contribute to such turnarounds, but leadership, we know, is the catalyst. And so the key point here is that genuine and effective school reform is just simply not possible without high quality school leadership. And so this doesn't diminish the importance of good teachers, strong homes, strong partnerships, community partnerships, but it simply says that a powerful and skilled leader is the most important. Next. Investing in principals is cost effective. Because of leaders' influence on schools, efforts to improve their recruitment, training, evaluation, and ongoing development should be considered highly cost-effective approaches to successful school improvement. So this morning, we're going to talk about how we are investing in our principals and our school and district leaders a little bit, because we know that investing in them, especially in principals, improves performance and also improves learning in our district schools. Next. So if you attended our Director of Staff Development, he presented to the Cornwall Center a few months ago, and he talked specifically about the partnership that we have with the Wallace Foundation and the project that we are in, the Principal Pipeline Project. And we're so very excited about this work. And in that work, we learned that an effective principal pipeline has 7 interlocking domains. And so I want to explain a little bit about each one, but for the purpose of this presentation today, we're only going to focus on 2 of them, on the job evaluation and support and principal supervisors. But the first one, leader standards, speaks to a district developing or revising their leader standards. And so we are doing some of that work. High quality pre-service principal preparation speaks to pre-service principal preparation provided by whether it be university partners, nonprofit partners, or in-house district programs. And we actually have a partnership right now with the Montclair State University where we are training. We have a cohort of 13 teachers currently that are in this pre-service program. Number 3 speaks to selective hiring and placement, and districts needing a system, a systematic system for recruiting, hiring, and placement of new leaders. Number 4, on the job evaluation and support, really emphasizes this idea of ongoing support that is focused on leadership of instructional improvement, particularly for the new principal. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The 5th one, principal supervisors, again, in our district, we call them our assistant superintendents. It speaks to really investing in them and supporting them so that they in turn can support the principals and develop them as leaders. And then number 6, the leader tracking system, speaks to districts really having like this system of gathering and compiling longitudinal data on aspiring and sitting principals so as to improve individual opportunities and pipeline management. And then the last one, number 7, really speaks to finances and building stakeholder support around your principal pipeline. Leanna, I think you're just one ahead of me. So although the district is giving equal attention to all 7 domains in our principal pipeline work plan, like I said, for today, this presentation where we're speaking to leading the leaders, we're going to dig deeper into domains 4 and 5. Okay, so some of the key actions that we wrote in our 5-year plan in our principal pipeline project, domain 4. We said that we were going to align our evaluation frameworks to the Newark leadership standards and provide professional development and support to current and aspiring school leaders. And then in domain 5, the work that we would do with our principal supervisors is really redefine their role to that which has the development of principals' instructional leadership capacity as its primary focus. And so we hope to provide resources and professional development to our assistant superintendent. So those are the 2 that I am going to focus on today, how we're doing that work. Next, Liana. Next. So why am I today focusing on those two? The purpose of sharing the data that you see in front of you is to really drive home the district's urgency around principal development. As you can see, this school year, 2021, there are currently 61 principals in our school district, 42 elementary and 19 secondary. 13 of our elementary principals are non-tenured, and 7 of our high school principals are non-tenured. So a third of our principals this year are non-tenured principals, meaning having less than 3 years of experience. If you look at our VPs this year, we have 146. 51 of them are non-tenured. So more than a third of our VPs are non-tenured. So if you look at the total number, almost half of our school leaders across the district are non-tenured. And that's why the work that we do with them is so important. And that's why the focus is on domains 4 and 5. Next, Liana. So I mentioned earlier that in the next decade, priority 4 speaks to continuous learning for all. I also mentioned that in the principal pipeline project, domain 4 speaks to on-the-job evaluation and support. And so there was a survey done by NAESP that found that one of the 4 primary drivers of principal turnover was profound isolation on the job. And when principals are asked what they need to stay in their roles, they overwhelmingly say ongoing support from their peers. So here are just some of the things that we're doing for our principals, because at the district level, we know that school leader support really is our domain. That is the domain of the school district. It's our responsibility to ensure that our principals receive ongoing coaching and support, professional development, and have opportunities to collaborate with their colleagues. And so the first one, central office buddy. What is that? Principals are buddied with a central office staff member, whether it be a director or a supervisor. And the central office buddy really has the responsibility of being the liaison between the principal and central office. And I'll give you an example. Principals are busy. They have so much on their plate. And there was one principal who was having a bad day because she needed an extra dumpster, something as simple as that. And she hadn't had the time to reach out to central office and ask for that extra dumpster. And her buddy did the work for her. Her buddy was the one that made the phone calls, reached out to facilities, and was able to get that for her. Now that sounds simple, and that's on the simple side of things, but we know that principals are busy. And so the central office buddy is that person that can get that work done for you or help to support you in getting things done at the central office level when you don't have the time. And then we have triads, right? So in a triad, principals are matched typically by the assistant superintendent. The triads meet as often as necessary. The meetings may include school walkthroughs, sharing strategies with your colleague, one-on-one assistant help with solving problems at the school level. But these are triads of principals that are grouped together, typically by the assistant superintendent based on strengths and growth areas. Sometimes a non-tenured principal may be matched in a triad with tenured principals. Typically, that is what happens. But that's the triad. And then ongoing support and coaching from the assistant superintendents. All of the principals are assigned to an assistant superintendent by ward. And so there's ongoing support and coaching from their assistant superintendents, whether it be on budget preparations, instruction, so forth and so on. And then also for our principals, there's the monthly superintendent's conference. These are the meetings with the superintendent every single month. And it's a chance for the school leader to hear directly from the superintendent or members of executive staff. Topics may include legal cases, budget, curriculum and assessment. Yesterday, we had a superintendent's conference, and we had an amazing presentation from our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning on how do we deepen the level of our PLCs. So those happen monthly with the superintendent. There are also monthly SLT meetings that are facilitated by the assistant superintendents with the support of the Office of Academic Services. They are there to provide PD. Also during those meetings, because these are smaller meetings, these are just with the principals in your ward. Principals get to share best strategies. There's one particular SLT that's doing an amazing book study on equity and how that impacts their school and what actions they can take. So those are some of the things that happens in the SLT meetings, is what we call them. And then summer and winter leadership institutes is also something that we also do. So in the summer, in August, before principals come back, we usually spend 3 full days with them where they are engaged in intense professional development, whether it be from our own teaching and learning department or from experts that we have brought into the district to support us. Last summer, we had Dr. Douglas Reeves, we had Dr. Anthony Muhammad. We had a number of presenters come in and share their expertise with our school leaders. And then for the very first time this winter, we will have a Winter Leadership Institute, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we thought this was important because we meet in the summer and then we don't all come back together, that same group, until the following summer. And in this group, all of the leaders are there, the vice principals, the DCs, the principals, the district level leaders. So we thought it was important to bring them back again. And so I'll talk about what the Winter Leadership Institute is going to look like. Next. So what I just shared with you is for all of the principals, all of the 61 principals across our school district. But we know that new principals require some additional support above and beyond what their colleagues receive. And so new principals are assigned a principal coach. And I think I saw one of our principal coaches in the meeting today. So thank you for joining. These are retired principals who provide individualized coaching and mentoring throughout the school year to principals that are either in year 1 or in year 2. And this is typically a 2-year relationship between the new principal and the principal coach. If needed, they could have a 3rd year because they're still non-tenured, but it's typically 2 years. We also have our new principals. They participate in a PLC project, which is in its 2nd year this year. And this is a partnership with Dr. Doug Reeves and Creative Leadership, where new principals are assigned a coach who works just directly with them and their instructional leadership team, their ILT, to improve the effectiveness of PLCs. That's their goal, is to just work on professional learning communities. And then there's the new principal support groups, where new principals are able to engage in support groups with their assistant superintendent and other new principals within their ward. So this is a smaller group. This isn't all of the new principals across the district, but this is by ward. And so if there are 2 or 3 new principals within a ward, they work together. Next. So I talked about this principal coach initiative. And so after the 1st year, we sent a survey to the non-tenure principals, the year 1 and 2 principals, and we asked them to give us some feedback on the initiative so that we can make adjustments. There were 8 questions ranging from rate your experience to describe the impact on your leadership. And I just want to share some of the responses. So one of the questions was, what did you find especially positive about your coaching experience? And one principal wrote, my coach is extremely knowledgeable and uses a questioning technique that requires me to discover the correct answers. She will follow up with probing questions until the correct response is discussed and flushed out. Another principal wrote, my coach provides me with consistent feedback that is specific to what I need and what the school needed. She really became a friend and a cheerleader. There are always fresh ideas and suggestions coming from my coach. When I told her that I wanted to make my school a blue ribbon, she was so excited and started to research the application process with me. So this is just some of the, and we had, I think, 17 principals that were part of this particular, that responded to this particular survey. Next, just want to share one more with you. One more question that we asked them. What did your principal coach do especially well that you would suggest that he or she continue to do more of? And one leader wrote, my coach pushes me to reflect on decisions and to plan ahead. She has developed my systems thinking approach to assist with all aspects of the principal role. Another, my coach consistently forwards emails with important updates or news in education and provides insight on different situations to help me grow as a leader. My coach always posed questions that allowed me to be reflective at the deepest level, after which she always confirmed my thoughts and thought process and provided specific recommendations. My coach also drew on her experiences as a former principal to help me when there were challenging situations. This provided me with clearer direction in resolving issues. The specific recommendations were always research proven and backed with relevant professional reference text. So it was really important for us to make sure that we were on the right track as it relates to not only matching the principal coach with the principal, but making sure that there was an impact and that it was doing what it was intended, which was improve their practices and support and coach them along the way. And the last one, we asked them to do some ratings for us. And so we asked, do you feel that your coach had a firm grasp of the district's direction and priorities? And 17 of the 17 said yes. This was important because one of the things that at the district level we've done is included all of the principal coaches in our meetings. They attend those conferences I mentioned to you, the monthly superintendent's conference, the monthly SLT meetings. They attend our leadership institutes. I'm constantly sharing documents with them. They receive our principal points, which is a biweekly newsletter that we send to all leaders, because we want them to be a part of the community. We want them to be engaged, because in order for them to help and coach and support principals, they have to be in the know, right? They need to know what's happening and what's going on across the district. So I was really happy to see that response. Second one was, do you think the district should continue the principal coaching initiative? All of them said yes. And on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your overall coaching experience? 11 out of 17 rated 5, which was the highest. 4 out of 17 rated 4, and 2 out of 17 rated 2. And I want to speak a little bit about the low rating from 2 of the leaders. One of the principal coaches fell ill during the time, and so communication had paused for a period. We've since adjusted that, which is why this is important. We've since adjusted that to make up some of that time and make sure that those 2 principals receive all of the support that they need. Next. Okay. So I shared with you the work that we're doing with the new teachers, right, in domain 4. I'm sorry, the new principals in domain 4. And now I want to talk a little bit about domain 5, and why the work with them is also important. We know that effective leaders mentor, coach, and develop other leaders. And so that's the role of the assistant superintendent. We have 5 assistant superintendents, and we have 1 executive director who also oversees our early childhood centers. So when I speak to principal supervisors, that's the group I'm speaking about. And so what is some of the work that we've done with them? They also attend the monthly superintendent's conference. They also attend the summer and winter leadership institutes. We have monthly check-ins where we check in on what's happening in the schools, what changes need to be made. I share relevant articles and information with them. And then there's also an executive mentor that is assigned to us at the district level that also supports and works with our assistant superintendents. Um, Maintaining an instructional focus is sometimes difficult for assistant superintendents due to many other responsibilities that they have. But I think with the support of central office, we've been able to really shift some of that work to make sure that they can really focus on instruction. And so I want to share some of the feedback from our assistant superintendents. I also asked them to share. The new agenda template for our monthly school leadership team meetings is directly aligned to the leaders framework. This allows us as assistant superintendents to align our PD to what principals need most to be successful. And I'll talk about what that means. So um, when I first started in this position, I kind of did an analysis of the agendas for the monthly school leadership team meetings. And what I was finding is that a lot of the meetings were announcements, um, discipline, things that are important, but really is not going to move the needle as it relates to instruction and building the capacity of principals to be instructional leaders. And so together we revised the agenda template. So now it directly matches the leadership framework. And one of the requirements is that at least 75 to 80% of your meeting has to be focused on instructional leadership and how to build them in that capacity. And so with the support of teaching and learning, special education, Office of Early Childhood, they often present to our principals during those meetings. And this year, we've really noticed a difference in terms of our principals in those areas. The second comment was, this is my first year engaging in a goal setting conference. I think it's important that we set goals that are directly aligned to supporting principals, especially in the areas of instruction and assessment. I started this year meeting with each one of them and asking them to set goals for the year, just like we asked teachers to do and principals to do, to set goals for the year that were directly aligned to the model principal supervisor standards. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And so in this goal setting conference, we really focused on, or they focused on, how were they going to improve principals? What were they going to do differently? How were they going to coach them and support them? How were they going to utilize data? And then lastly, the last comment, the direct support from the Office of Academic Services supports us as we support principals. And, I want to just commend the Office of Academic Services, which includes the Teaching and Learning Department, Special Education, Early Childhood, the Testing Department, the Title I Office, because all of those staff development, because all of those departments have really done a phenomenal job of just supporting our school leaders, supporting our assistant superintendents, just to make their jobs a little easier and to make sure that the main thing stays the main thing, right, which is instruction. Next. So we are in no way done in terms of the work that we want to do. And so here are some things that are coming up for us. One, we want to develop a standard-based evaluation framework for school leaders. So remember, I talked about the first domain for the principal pipeline project is to utilize standards, right? And so a group of stakeholders last spring came together, and it was principals, assistant superintendents, central office level staff, and we did a crosswalk of our current leadership framework to the professional standards for education leaders. And we learned that there is a need to revise our leadership framework to directly align with those standards. And so that's something that we are working on. Also coming up for us, create a training mechanism for principal coaches. So I mentioned principal coaches working with our new school leaders, and there are 6 of them. And they all come with a wealth of knowledge, having been former school leaders. They attend all of our professional learning, as I mentioned. I meet with them bi-monthly, and we discuss, principal strengths and challenges. We share ideas, they share ideas amongst each other. we make any adjustments. They also completed a survey at the end of the first year to kind of give me feedback on what the district can do differently. But we want to look into creating a more formal process for training these coaches. And so that's what we're doing. The third one, develop a new evaluation tool for assistant superintendents that focus on principal growth and instructional leadership. So we have a draft of this. We have a draft of a new assistant superintendent evaluation tool. I partnered with the Director of Educator Effectiveness, along with our Wallace Foundation consultant to create this document. It's in draft, but I think that it will really push us and push them to focus on principal growth and growing them as instructional leaders. So that's also in process. Provide professional development opportunities for assistant superintendents. So I talked about the monthly conferences and the leadership institutes, but I really want to have some conferences that are just directly aligned to the work of developing principals. That, that's a challenging job, right? And so I feel that our assistant superintendents, even including me, right, we could use some support in how to do that really well. And so I'm looking into conferences that are just solely directed at supporting them in that work. So if anyone in this meeting can help out with that, I would appreciate it. We are leveraging our partnership with the Wallace Foundation to explore some opportunities in that area. School leader survey. So after PD sessions, we always send surveys to principals. Hey, how was this training? How was it? But we feel like it's important to really query not only the presence and quantity of school leader supports, but also the topics covered, right? And the perceived quality of those supports. We want to know, does this support you? How has this PD impacted what you're going to do in your school? What else do you want to learn more about? And so we really want to come together at the start of the year and ask them what they need. What do you need as school leaders to be successful, and gear our PD sessions towards that? So those are some things that that are in progress right now, things that we're working on. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that we had a summer leadership institute, and upcoming is a virtual winter leadership institute, February 24th and 25th. This is when we will bring all of our school leaders back again. And if you can see, we have on day one, we have a keynote speaker. And on day one, a keynote speaker in the morning, and then breakout sessions in the afternoons. And this is for all of our school leaders, whether you're a VP, a DC, or a principal. We've asked them to send at least one of your leadership team members to each session, so that in the afternoon, when you get into your guided work session, you're able to talk about, what are you going to do with this work? What actions are you going to take? And so that's upcoming on February 24th and 25th. And in speaking to our Director of Staff Development, we are already at over 300 leaders who have registered. So we're really excited about what's coming up next week: the evolving role of school leadership, cultivating an equity-focused mindset to promote teacher and student success. And the reason why we're doing this is not only to have a second session for the year, but this year no one's able to travel, right? We can't go anywhere, we can't go to conferences. And so we thought, why not bring this great PD into the district? And it's even easier now because we're all virtual. And so that's what we're doing next week, and we're super excited about that work. Next. So I love this picture. As our superintendent always says, we are number one, second to none. And so here are some of our school leaders. Every year, since he's been superintendent, he's brought all of the school leaders together for a picture like this where we're all, putting up our number one finger, representing that we're number one, second to none. And so I want to thank you for inviting me to share today. I'm hopeful that this overview of how we are developing and supporting our newest leaders and why we've launched these initiatives was informative and provided just a little glimpse into the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for the great presentation. I invite people to use the chat to submit your questions, and you'll be allowed to unmute your mic to ask your question directly to Ms. Johnson. But Nicole, one of the things, Ms. Johnson, one of the things that struck me during your presentation was your slide that you had, and you were showing untenured staff. And I'm just wondering, is there any particular explanation to understand the number of untenured staff?
The number of non-tenured staff?
Yeah.
Yep. So we've had a number of principals be promoted, such as myself, right? So someone had to replace me in the school. So when the superintendent came on board, he promoted a number of principals. And so that left vacancies in their schools. Mm-hmm. That's one reason. Then we had other principals who left to go on to other schools. We had principals who took on positions at the central office level and director positions. And so that led to just a number of new principals coming into the role.
And we also had a question from Yolanda Green. Yolanda was wondering, are you able to share the aggregate evaluation data of principals and VPs, both system-wide and by ward?
Can you ask that again? I didn't even hear it.
Yeah. Are you able to share the aggregate evaluation data of the principals and VPs, both system-wide and by ward? Is that some data that you can share with?
So evaluation data, as we know, is confidential. Mm-hmm. A leader's ratings is confidential. So we're not able to share that data.
So can you, Yolanda also wanted to know is it, for the data, could you speak to the issues of evaluation data, in terms of what you found and what were some things that kind of stood out to you in terms of your review of the evaluation data?
Are you speaking to the evaluation of the principals?
I think so. I think she's speaking towards.
Mm-hmm. So as you know, the I don't know if you know this, but the assistant superintendents, they rate the principals in the school, and it's based on 5 competencies within our leadership framework. And our leadership framework is on our district website. Within those 5 competencies, there are a number of indicators in each of those competencies, and so they're rated on those as well. And it's based on walkthroughs of the school. The assistant superintendents have even been able to do virtual walkthroughs. So it's based on walkthroughs. It's based on artifacts. The principals are always able to share evidence and artifacts prior to any evaluation. It's based on, for example, one of the competencies is just all around coaching and development of teachers. And so principals are rated on that work. Are you norming with your team? Are you rating teachers accurately? And so in terms of the evaluation data, we found that the majority of our principals are typically rated effective as a whole on an annual. They may have individual indicators that are rated either higher or lower, but overall their annual ratings are usually effective.
Mm-hmm. So next we have a question from Kimberly. Kimberly, feel free to unmute, and then after Kimberly, we have a question from Robin.
Sure. Hi. Good morning, Nicole. So I just wanted to know, as you were describing the different supports given to principals and the different initiatives going on, is there a team, to sum up my question, is there a team for the principals at their schools that can be assigned to do the duties that may otherwise like distract or overwhelm the principal. I know you mentioned like buddy system with like central office to get dumpsters and stuff like that, but is there like a go-to support staff for principals that they can rely on?
At the school level.
Yeah.
Right. So at each of our schools, we have instructional leadership teams. And in that team is typically the principal, the vice principals. If I'm speaking of elementary schools right now, a principal, vice principal, we have teacher coaches. We have 2 in every single school, a math coach and an ELA coach. And then we have academic interventionists, and we typically also have 2 of them. That makes up the instructional leadership team at the school. And that's the team that really is there to work with the principal. The principal can't be everywhere, can't see everything, can't be in every classroom. But this team meets weekly, regularly, in some cases weekly, with the principal to give the principal another eye in terms of what's happening across the school. It's interesting that you asked that question because I also teach a course at Montclair State with our very own students. Remember, I talked about we have this cohort of teachers that are at Montclair State getting their degree to become leaders. And our module this month is all around managing a school leadership team as a principal, because you cannot be everywhere and you can't see everything. And I asked one of the principals from our schools to share to record one of her instructional leadership team meetings and to share it with me so that I can then in turn share it with the students. And it was so very powerful, just the structure of it, the agenda, what she was the information that she was getting from her team in terms of just what's happening in our classrooms, our virtual classrooms, what's happening with our teachers, what's happening with our students. And so that is the support team at the school level for the principal. If I'm answering your question correctly, that is typically the team that is closest to the principal and working directly with the principal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so Robin?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Johnson.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. So I was just curious, I was really excited to see that in the winter symposium, there's going to be a lot of focus around racial equity. And so having been in a position where I worked on equity for many, many years, but hadn't necessarily defined it on paper, I'm just curious to know, has the district been able to sort of define what equity is for the district, and then have the principals been able to sort of think about and or implement any of that vision of equity within their schools? And if so, how?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Robin, thank you for that question, because we are so excited about the work that we're doing around equity. And thank you, Matt put the equity statement in the chat box. But before we even go there, so last year, I think it was last year, the superintendent partnered with the New Jersey Department of Education to help us really do this work and to create a plan around what this equity work would look like in our district. And so we have a number of principals, and I don't want to give the number because I'll be wrong. It might be 10. A number of principals that are considered our equity principal group. They meet with New Jersey Department of Ed. They meet with CREED to really talk about what are some of the inequities across our district. Again, a class that I'm teaching at Montclair State, one of the sessions was on equity, and I invited 4 of the panel members to come and share with the students on, okay, how has the work that you're doing on this equity panel at the district level impacted what you're doing in your school, right? What are you doing differently now in your school based on what you're learning? And those 3 principals, just the work that they shared that they're doing, changing how teachers are presenting curriculum, right? Changing the books that are shared with students, having these real conversations at faculty meetings and PLC meetings about ensuring that we start not with a deficit perspective, right? And And so we have a long way to go, Robin, trust me, we do. But I think that we're on the right track as it relates to really talking about equity. So in the summer, our conference was also about equity, and it will be about equity again this winter. I want to thank Matt, because Matt is really our equity leader in the district in terms of leading that work for what we're doing. But even in the Office of Teaching and Learning, if you have a chance, you can go right onto our website. And if anyone is on here, I think Dr. Riley is on here, who's our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. If you can just drop in the chat box the link to our curriculum courses, take a look, Robin, at just some of the units, the new units that were written this summer, for students, the books that were chosen, the themes that were chosen. It's just some amazing work that's happening.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'm sort of tag on
And
question.
you have an invite. If you'd like to come to the Leadership Institute, let me know.
Yes, I would. Thank you. So thanks for that. And then I'm wondering, because I know Wallace, the work that they do in that principal pipeline initiative, has at least talking about equity. Has Newark been able to share some of these initiatives and the progress with that sort of cohort of folks who are from districts around the country?
So we are in a cohort through this Wallace Foundation partnership that we have. We're in a cohort with other districts. Our next meeting coming up is in April. So I mentioned to you that we have a Wallace Foundation consultant. Her name is Irma. She walked us through the whole process last year of creating our 5-year plan, and she's also again with us this year. So we will be meeting again with her on April 12th to just talk about kind of where we are and to hear from other districts. In our cohort is, and Matt, if I say it wrong, please put it in the chat, Jersey City, Puerto Rico, Patterson, Yonkers, and I'm missing someone, but we're in the cohort with those other school districts. Thank you for that, whoever put that in the chat. We're in a cohort with those other school districts, and we come together and we talk about the work that we're doing with this project. And I will share that through the work that we did last year, the goal was to create a plan, right? We had to create a 5-year plan across those 7 domains that I shared with you. And so our consultant worked with us all through last year. We had a number of meetings. The superintendent was at every single meeting. He committed to the work and was at every meeting. Anyway, so at the end of the year, we submitted our 5-year work plan. It had to be over 50 pages. And it was evaluated by the Wallace Foundation, and ours, Newark, came back without any recommendations for revisions. So we are just super proud of that work.
That's huge.
Yes.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, Matt, I had it right. Thank you.
You were right on target.
And next, I think we have a question from Van Deen.
Sure. Deputy Johnson, thank you so much for this talk. Your comment on how you shifted the meetings with principal supervisors to be primarily focused on instruction resonated with me. So could you please give a sense of how that shift occurred and maybe a high-level view of some of the instructional themes of focus? Absolutely. I know Dr. Riley gave a talk a few months ago on the instructional reform, so we have a sense of that, but I'm curious as to how it plays out month to month.
Absolutely. So like I said to you, they meet monthly, and at each of those meetings, actually, I'll start by talking about what's happening in the high schools, because that is just phenomenal. The agenda has totally shifted from this compliance sort of discipline to the entire meeting from 8:30 to 3 o'clock is on instruction. And at each one of those meetings, the math director and the ELA supervisor is in attendance leading those sessions. And Dr. Riley is on here too. They are leading those sessions, engaging the high school principals in what does good math instruction look like? What does good ELA instruction look like? The principals, these are not teacher leaders, these are not VPs, these are principals that are bringing actual student work samples to the SLT meetings and analyzing those student work samples with the help of the Office of Teaching and Learning. So that's what I mean by just a shift from moving those announcements and those type of things to an email, right? And making the meetings really just focused on instruction. I hope did I give you a good enough example?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And so now I think we have a question from Leah. Leah, feel free to unmute.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Deputy Johnson. Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
So my question is to ask if you can speak to specific strategies principals are employing to care for students at this time. So I attend all of the board meetings, or if I'm absent, then I watch it later on, and I get a lot of, I get an understanding that many programs and initiatives are being put in place, but the board meetings really aren't the location to go into detail. So I'm hoping that you can actually, and also there's not that back and forth dialogue. So I'm hoping you can actually talk more specifically about what principals are doing. And I word it that way about caring, because of course we need to think about attendance and instruction, and all of those pieces are important. But I feel like if we also talk about and change the language in a way to actually center students, and that's important. So could you talk about things principals are doing to care for students?
Yeah, and I'll actually give you an example. So we have a new student rep this year. Her name is Kimberly Gonzalez, an amazing young lady. And I typically meet with her on Thursdays to just kind of, hey, what are you doing? Is there anything I can support you with? Are you ready for your board report next week? Do you need help with it? So forth and so on. And so I was scheduled to meet with Kimberly last week, and I said, I can't meet at our normal time, which is after school. Is there any way you can meet? And I think I said something like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And she says, I can't because I'm going to be in a meditation group. And I was like, okay, right? And she said, my school has these sessions every day where students that are struggling, students that are having challenges, students that need extra support, we are excused to go to these sessions and meet with our advisors or our counselors or whatever. And I said, wow, okay. And she said, so if you don't mind, I'd like to go to that today because my friend needs some support and we can meet later. So that's just one example of that particular school and something that they're doing. At the elementary level, what I know for sure is that there is time built in for counselors to meet with students, time built in for social workers. I'm going to give you another example. My former school, which is Elliott Street School, where I was the principal, I was invited, this was towards the beginning of the school year, I was invited to sit in on one of the small groups with the social worker because they knew that I had a relationship with the student. I had been the principal there for 6 years, and the student was in 7th grade. And so I sat in on this small group with the social worker, and it was actually one of the VPs was there, and then 2 students. And they were using Rethink. So, and if you've attended our meetings, Ms. Owens, Dr. Owens, then you've heard about us, you heard us talk about Rethink, right? That's our SEL program. And the social worker was using the strategies from the SEL program to really coach the students in sort of like this peer mediation, right? And talking about not just peer mediation, but talking about how to care for your friends, how to care for yourself, how to resolve issues or whatever. So to answer your question, we have Rethink, which is our SEL program. Every single school in our district utilizes Rethink. We purchased it district-wide. Initially, it was only at some schools through a grant, through our Project Prevent grant, but now it's in every single school. Also, the Office of Teaching and Learning. And again, if Dr. Riley, if you're on here, if you can add the link, that'd be great. Also through our Office of Teaching and Learning, every single lesson, within every single lesson, there is SEL embedded into that. And so those are just some of the ways that principals, school counselors, social workers, thank you so much, are working with students, like you said, beyond attendance, beyond academics, but really just how are you doing? How are you feeling? And those rethink lessons start with that. We even have it for adults now. And so we just started, the Office of Student Life just started also training adults, our staff members, not just for students, but for themselves. And actually coming up in March, and you probably will hear more about this next week when we have our board meeting. Coming up in March, the Office of Student Life has created these weekly sessions just for staff members, where outside counselors will be made available to our teachers, our custodial workers, our food service workers, to support them also during this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Johnson, you kind of touched on this, but in terms of immediate impact, you talked about that and shifts, but are there any things that stand out to you, things that surprise you, things that you're impressed with, things that you didn't anticipate in terms of the immediate impacts and shifts that you've seen with the work with principals?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked about the partnerships, one, the principal coaches, right? And then the PLC project partnership that we have with Dr. Reeves and Creative Solutions. And so I often get these reports from them about how principals are doing, what are still just some challenge or growth areas, what are their strengths. And most recently, I received a report from Creative Solutions around a particular school around just the growth from when the principal started in September in this project until now. And he attached a copy of the principal's agenda for a faculty meeting, a sample from September and a sample from last month. And oh my goodness, just the difference. So the September agenda was task, right? Like this list of tasks. Here's what our teachers, you do this. Custodians, you do this, that type of thing. To now, the agenda was actually breakout groups, where during that 1 hour faculty meeting, teachers and staff members, because remember, a faculty meeting is everyone, it's not just teachers, it's your nurse, it's your social workers, your guidance counselors, it's everyone, where they were in, the principal put them in breakout groups to talk about, to Dr. Owen's point, to talk about how can we better support our families. And then they had to report back to her on some ideas. So if that's not an example of a shift in how this work is really supporting and improving principal practices, and I don't know what else is, because that was just an eye opener for me.
And Ms. Johnson, I know you have a hard stop time, so I just want to invite people, if you do have any questions, to definitely use the chat. You'll be allowed to unmute. But I had a question earlier from Dr. Marcus Anthony. He wanted to know, in terms of COVID-19, how has it posed any challenges to you in terms of principal leadership training, and how has those challenges possibly been, negative or good? I know you're saying that you're able during your district training to have more individuals come in because it's virtual. Has that benefited you in terms of training and leadership training for your principals?
Mm-hmm. So one of the benefits I will say is that we're able to have more people participate, because you don't have to leave your office or your house, right? And so we've been able to have more people participate. We've been able to have more consultants join us, right, on any given day or time, because we don't have the constraints of the travel, right? In terms of challenges, I'll speak for myself. For me, not being able to walk through a school side by side with a principal, in and out of classrooms, norming on what we see has been a challenge, right? So yes, you can log into a teacher's WebEx and you can, with the principal, and you can view a lesson, but it's just not the same. It's not the same as being able to walk into a door with the principal and say, hey, come on, I'm here to just support you today. I'm not here to evaluate. I'm here to support you. I'm here to coach you show me where you're struggling and let's go look at it together. So that's been a challenge, I know, for me, and I think it's been a challenge for the assistant superintendents as well, not being able to actually get into the schools and do that work with principals. However, I do think that the district has done a really good job of making do with what we have, right? And still bringing professional learning to principals, virtually. That was my charge this year. I started in September saying to the director of staff development, this can't just end in August. We can't just have this one-stop shop where everybody comes together and we have this 3-day institute and then it's over, right? This needs to happen more often. And so that's where the winter institute came in. But so, yeah, well, it's not perfect, Mike, because we are virtual. However, I think that we've just done a really good job of navigating, the best we can. I know that even the Office of Teaching and Learning, the assistant superintendent, Dr. Riley, she, we talked one day and she said, I'm really going to set up a schedule to where my supervisors, my directors are in classrooms and in PLCs weekly. And we're going to stick to that schedule. And that's what they've been doing. That is what they've been doing. And she was able to share with us yesterday at the superintendent's conference some of that work, because now we can also record it, right? We can record it because it's WebEx, you hit record and you've got the video, right? So we were able to see yesterday just some of the work that's happening in the PLCs with teachers, because her staff, her supervisors and directors are in those classrooms and in those PLCs. And also a bonus, because I don't have to travel around the city of Newark, I can attend 2 or 3 SLT meetings in a day. So that's a bonus. I'm always looking on the bright side of things.
Yeah, I imagine it can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Yeah. In terms of your time commitments. But Ms. Johnson, I really want to thank you for participating. As I mentioned earlier, I know you have a hard stop time and we want to be mindful of your time that you provided to us. But I do want to give you an opportunity to provide any closing remarks, as well as highlight any information that that you and your staff have posted in the chat.
Yeah, so first I want to thank my staff that are on here, the executive staff and any other members, because I can't see you if you've joined today. I really, really appreciate your support. I see that the strategic plan is in the chat box. If you have not had a chance, please take a look at that. There are resources for students coming out of the Office of Student Life. Take a look at those. There's also the leadership framework. So I talked about how we are going to revise the leadership framework to match the PCEL standards. And so there's a link in there where you can actually look at it in its current state. A link to the curriculum resources. Robin, to your point, Dr. Riley has put the link there for you to go in and take a look at some of the great curriculum that's been done over the past year. So feel free to go to all of those links. But in closing, I just want to say thank you for inviting me today. Thank you for understanding and for saying to us that this work is important, right? And we want to hear from Newark. And so on behalf of the superintendent, we thank you for that. We've done a lot. The pandemic has not stopped us. The superintendent started, I never forget, on March 16th was the day that we officially closed. And he said to executive staff, we are not on vacation. And we were like, okay, right? And he said, nothing will stop. We will continue with our principal pipeline project. We will continue with the development of our 10-year strategic plan. We are not on vacation. And we've just been working every day since then and just trying to navigate the technology part of it, but doing the work, because we're not going to always be in this pandemic. It will soon end, right? And so we want to make sure that we're ready and prepared for that time. And also in the interim, again, as I said, our principals feel supported, because ultimately when they feel supported and they're doing well, teachers do well. And when teachers are doing well, we see student success. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And I miss Dr. Payne.
Yeah, I am. He, sends his regards for not being able to make it today, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
He had another commitment that prevented him
And
from.
thank you for everyone who's on here today. I can't even see, I don't even know who's on here, but thank you for taking the time out today. On my last slide was, sorry, Dr. Sumi is my executive assistant. You can put my email address in the chat box, that's fine. But if you have any questions that you think of outside of this afternoon, please feel free to email me.
Yeah. So, and on behalf of the Cornwall Center, Ms. Johnson, we really want to thank you so much. This has been a great presentation, and we really appreciate the time and attention that the district has given us in terms of your interest in reaching a larger Newark public to, explain to them the outstanding work. And we thank you for openness in that process.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Stay safe, stay warm, everyone, and take care.
Everyone, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.